Hello friends. Welcome to this educational video. We will discuss one of the important aspects of quantitative research, namely sampling. When we conduct research, it is often impossible to study the entire population. For example, we cannot interview all high school students in Indonesia, or all civil servants in a province. That is why we need something called a sample, which is a portion of the population that is considered to be able to represent the whole. But, did you know that there are various types of samples in quantitative research, and each has a different purpose and method of use? Well, in this video, we will discuss the 8 most commonly used types of samples, complete with explanations and real examples. Let's get started. White heavy checkmark 1. Simple random sampling. This is the most basic and most neutral sampling method. In simple random sampling, every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. The selection process is completely random, like a lottery. For example, you want to know the stress level of high school students in a city with 500 students. Instead of interviewing everyone, you select 50 students at random, for example using a random number generator or a name shuffle. With this method, no one is favored or excluded. Everyone has an equal chance. This method is great for avoiding bias, and the results can be generalized to the wider population with more confidence. White heavy checkmark 2. Stratified sampling. Sometimes, the population is not homogeneous. There are important differences such as gender, age, major, or economic background. In cases like this, we can use stratified sampling. Stratified sampling is a technique where we divide the population into several strata or groups based on certain characteristics. Then, from each group, we take a random sample with the appropriate proportion. For example, out of 500 students, 300 are male and 200 are female. If we want to take 20% as a sample, then we take 60 males and 40 females. This helps ensure that all groups in the population are fairly represented. White heavy checkmark 3. Systematic sampling. This method is also quite often used. Here's how. You make a list of all members of the population, then select every nth element based on a certain interval. For example, you have a list of 1,000 names and want to select 100 people. So, you can select every 10th person on the list, 10, 20, 30, and so on. The important requirement is that the population list must be randomized first, so that the order does not cause a certain bias pattern. This technique is more practical than pure random, but still quite objective. White heavy checkmark 4. Cluster sampling. Now, what if your population is very large and spread over a wide area? For example, you want to study elementary school students throughout Central Java. It would be very difficult to have to select students one by one. This is where cluster sampling can be used. In this method, you divide the population into groups or clusters, usually based on location, then select several clusters randomly. After that, all members in the selected cluster are sampled. For example, you randomly select 5 elementary schools out of 50 in a city. Then, you study all students from those 5 schools. This method is very efficient in terms of time and logistics, although the level of accuracy can decrease if the clusters are not homogeneous. White heavy checkmark 5. Convenience sampling. Now we go into the non-probability type. The first is convenience sampling, which is a sampling technique from the people who are easiest to reach. For example, you are on campus and want to research the breakfast habits of students. You interview 30 students who are hanging out in the cafeteria because they are the easiest to find. This technique is very fast and cheap, but the results cannot be generalized scientifically because they may not represent the population as a whole. White heavy checkmark 6. Purposive sampling. This method is used when you want to select a sample based on certain criteria that are relevant to your research objectives. For example, you are researching leadership styles, then you only choose school principals or company managers as respondents. You do not choose them carelessly, but based on the assessment that they are the most suitable people to answer the research questions. This method is very useful for in-depth research, case studies, or when you need insight from people who are truly experts or have certain experiences. White heavy checkmark 7. Quota sampling. Quota sampling is similar to stratified sampling because they both divide the population into groups. But the difference is, in quota sampling you don't take samples randomly, but rather fill quotas based on certain targets. For example, you want to interview 50 respondents, consisting of 25 men and 25 women. So you look for respondents until the quota is met, regardless of whether they were selected randomly or not. This method is fast and easy to use in the field, although it is not as accurate as probability techniques. White heavy checkmark 8. Snowball sampling. Finally, there is a unique technique called snowball sampling. This technique is used when you want to research groups that are difficult to find or hidden, such as drug users, LGBTQ+ communities in conservative areas, or perpetrators of domestic violence. The method is, you start with 1 or 2 respondents, then they recommend the next respondent, and so on. Your sample also increases little by little, like a rolling snowball. Although not representative, this method can be the only way to access certain groups ethically and safely. Thank you for watching. If you find this explanation useful, don't forget to like and share it with your friends who are also learning about research methods. See you in the next educational video.